to be a super fun week full of things we get to celebrate. So we have May the 4th be with you coming up, which is one of my favorite little, I guess, made up holidays by the great folks at Star Wars. So, my family, we are super into Star Wars. So we've all got t-shirts and things to wear for the day, just, to have fun. I may even sport some Princess Leia buns. We will see how it goes. It's a great time to experiment with sulky glowy thread, sulky metallic thread, even sulky reflective thread, all those fun effects that we can achieve by using these, fun threads that Sulky offers. So have some fun on Star Wars Day, May the 4th. Also, Cinco de Mayo coming up right after May 4th. I love me some guacamole, I will say. So we will be having fiesta over here at my house. And today's project, I had a cute little Cinco de Mayo sound effect for you all. So today's project can actually be easily modified for Cinco de Mayo or honestly any holiday, any day of the year. So it's a great fun project. We're going to start off with a free pattern from the good folks at Hey June Handmade. And I will get into that momentarily and share the modifications that I did to the pattern to kind of put my twist on it and make it my own. Let's see what else. It's the first week of May. So exciting. Summer is right around the corner. So for all of us out there still having, waking up with snow on the ground and frost and we can't plant flowers yet, raise your hand if you're in the same predicament as me. It's coming. It's coming. So, all right. Before we get started on the fun project today, or projects really, because I'm going to throw some quick and easy stitch outs and sewing projects in the end here today as well to kind of make our apron a complete package. So you can kind of pick your own adventure, choose from the projects I'm going to show you today for what to make today and or this week. But before we get into that, I want to make sure everyone is signed up, registered, ready to go for our Scissor Stasher webcast. This is a free event at sewingonline.sulky.com. We will be live streaming on May 17th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm going to take you through this awesome In the Hoop scissor lanyard project. It's a little pouch you can wear around your neck, stash your scissors in there, your snips, your curved tip squeezers that I love to use so much so that you will always have them near you while you are sewing, embroidering, quilting, creating. I think you're all really going to love this project. It comes together very quickly and easily in the hoop of your embroidery machine. I'm going to show you all the steps it takes to create it, and then I'm also going to show you how to modify it. So you can make lots of these and no two will be alike. We do have kits available for this and they are on sale already. The Scissor Stasher Webcast Kit is only $19.99. You will get enough fabric, ribbon for your lanyard string, the batting that goes in between to make it a nice plushy pouch, a pack of Microtex needles, 2 spools of Sulky Poly Deco thread, and a pack of Sulky Soft and Sheer Stabilizer. That's what we are going to use in the hoop to build our In the Hoop project. So all of these things on sale for only $19.99. So you're going to save quite a bit of money by purchasing your kit ahead of time. This sale is only good until midnight of the day of the webcast, so you can only get this $19.99 deal until May 17th at midnight or until supplies last. If we run out before then, what can I say? They are limited supply and, this is enough to make one scissor stasher, and then you can go on and make more using your soft and sheer stabilizer and your needles and the tips that I give you about modifying the design. Also, once you register for the webcast, it is completely free to register for this one and completely free to attend. You will receive our Sewing Mends the Soul patch design to create in your embroidery machine. This is an in the hoop freestanding patch. And I'm going to go through the steps for this patch if you want to add it to your scissor stasher. I'm also going to show you how to modify your scissor stasher design to include the patch design so it's no longer freestanding and it becomes part of the project as well. So lots of things to learn during the free webcast. I hope you will all join. If you have signed up already, give me a thumbs up. As long as you are engaging with the post today, giving me those thumbs up, those cute emojis, putting your comments and questions in the live chat or in the comments below, somehow engaging with me today, you are automatically eligible to win our gift. And today's gift is our summer Poly Sparkle thread assortment. It comes with 6 spools of beautiful sulky Poly Sparkle thread just in time for those summer makes. And it's a 30-weight thread with flecks of metallic running through it in pinks and blues and greens and all of those great summery colors. All right. Also, one last thing before we get into the tutorial today. If you joined us for our Casey Duffel video cast back in February, and even if you didn't and you want to still make a Casey Duffel, all you have to do is upload a photo of your finished bag to our Casey Duffel photo contest. Once you do that, fill out your entry form, gather as many votes as you can from friends and family, and if you get the most votes, you will win a Brother sewing machine. I know, it's valued at like $1,199 or something like this. It is an amazing sewing machine with a big flatbed attachment so you can sew lots and lots of things. You will just absolutely love adding it to your sewing room. You will also win some dream collections of thread and stabilizers from Sulky. Huge. You will also win a cutting assortment from Havel's. You will win a Cork membership from Sally Tomato. You will win a Fashion Institute membership, I guess it's called, from American Sewing Guild. So there are so many things to win. We will have one grand prize winner. This is also open to international sewists. So if you are not part of the US, you can still enter to win. And we have a separate prize offering for those folks who are entering internationally. So everyone is eligible to win. All you have to do is complete your Casey Duffel bag, snap a photo of it, upload it to the contest platform, and start getting votes. And if you're not making a Casey Duffel, which I know you're going to want to, but if you're not making a Casey Duffel, head on over there and vote and check out all of the beautiful work that our fellow sewists and people of our Sulky community have done. We have over 20 entries so far, and there is just some beautiful things. Like I said before, we really love to see your takes on the creations that we present to you, because it's all about personalization and making things our own, right? There are some times when we want to make it exactly how we see it because we just fall in love with that, and I can totally respect that as well. But, you know, that's one of the great things about sewing, is being able to put our twist, our design, our spin on things to really make it our own. So that's what's really fun about going over to the photo contest page and looking at all the photos of the entries and seeing how similar some are and how different some are. It's really interesting that a lot of you decided to put butterfly embroideries on your bags instead of the florals that came with the video cast. So it's really great. Head on over there and check them out. It might just inspire you to finish your Casey bag as well. So the ability to enter is going to end on June 30th. So there still is a little bit of time, but I'm going to be announcing the winner of the Casey Duffel bag, both the US-based winner and the international winner, at American Sewing Guild Conference in San Antonio at the end of June. I will be live streaming and I will announce the winners live. Isn't that fun? All right. If you haven't heard about the Casey Duffel video cast, you can still register for it and just watch it all on demand at your leisure. Buy the pattern, grab up the kit. We still have kits available that come with the pattern. We have the kit in a black, gray, and blue colorway. We also have the kit in a red, pinkish, brownish colorway. Both of them are absolutely beautiful. You could see the red or the burgundy version in the caption below on the little graphic bar that is underneath where I'm speaking. So, all right. Dawn says, I love this pattern and I put a twist on mine. I saw your entry, Dawn, so very good. I hope you're getting lots and lots of votes and sending people over to the contest page to vote for you as well. All right. Lots of people saying making it unique. And that's a really good segue into the project I'm going to present for you today, which is the Allspice apron. This apron pattern, I was looking for one of those, I think they call them Japanese style aprons, where they crisscross in the back and you don't have to have ties to tie it shut. I really love those aprons for lots of things, for cooking, gardening, crafting, and they have really great coverage, and I've never made one before. And I came across the Allspice apron from Hey June Handmade, and it was absolutely free to download and print out the pages, tape them together. So I decided to start with that, and then I made a few modifications to the pattern. And if you want that free pattern, I linked directly to it in the description of today's post. So if you are not seeing that, you might need to click the little See More button on the side of the beginning of the description, and then the whole description will pop out. You will see featured products, and the apron link is right at the top. So you'll be able to click right on over there and download your Allspice apron from Hey June Handmade. Hey June has a lot of great garment patterns that I've made in the past. Really great digital patterns that you can print out, tape together, and start sewing today. All right. Deborah says, I made one of them. So easy to wear. Exactly. Hey, Deb. All right, so last week I debuted my mom on Sew What. She was modeling our infinity scarf, and now she's modeling our apron today. And that's because my kids and I decided to make this apron for her for Mother's Day. And I know there's a separate day for Grandparents' Day, but you know what? She can have this for Mother's Day anyway. So I say my kids and I, but let's be real. I made the whole thing and my kids helped me pick out the design. But that's okay. Sometimes they like to help. Sometimes they do not. And we're just going to enjoy the times they want to help and, they'll make the card. But anyway, she had to get a sneak peek of her Mother's Day gift so that she could model it so beautifully for us today. So here she is wearing the Allspice apron, and you can see some of the modifications I made to the pattern already. First off, I added machine embroidery. We can't have a plain front apron now, can we? So I added machine embroidery to the front, a large scale design. It says, Grandmas are mommies with frosting. And it's a design by Scissortail Stitches. I linked directly to the design. If you want to purchase that design yourself, go through that link that's on our featured products in the description of the post today. And along with adding machine embroidery, I also modified the pocket. There is a pocket piece included with the pattern, and there's a placement line for the pocket piece on your apron pattern pieces, which makes it so easy to come together. So I'm going to go through the modifications I did for the pocket for you, as well as the embroidery. And I also made my own bias binding to go around the entire apron. And since it's a crisscross crossover back, it's one continuous piece of bias binding, double fold bias binding. Now, in her pattern instructions, she does say you can certainly use pre-made or packaged double fold bias tape. However, you have to press out all the folds and repress your double fold bias tape in half with wrong sides facing in order to do the method that she teaches you in the pattern. And I thought that seemed like a lot of work for a hack or a shortcut such as using pre-made bias tape. I'm going to go ahead and make my own because that sounds way easier, and I get to tie in this really cute, adorable kitchen motif fabric that I found for my pocket into the binding. So I'll go over that with you as well. So first off, we are going to tape together all of those pattern pieces. And you could see there's about 13 pages or so for the pattern itself, and you do cut it on the fold. You need quite a bit of yardage because you are cutting it on the fold. And what was the other thing I was going to say? I used a lovely linen fabric for this. How many times have we actually used linen fabric for linens and things like aprons? It really elevates the apron and makes it look very expensive. And I got this linen fabric on sale at Joann Fabrics. It wasn't any more expensive after the sale and coupons than it would have been to use a cute quilting cotton. But the linen is just, I mean, it looks like it's, Crate and Barrel or, something just more expensive and, like I said, elevated. And it's got a really, really nice hand to it. And even though you're using it for cooking and things of that nature, it's very washable. But we know that linen can get very wrinkly. So for this and for prepping this and pressing it and for machine embroidery, I like to use a spray starch or a spray starch alternative of some kind. I like to use Mary Ellen's Best Press when I am ironing and pressing the linen to make sure everything is nice and flat and crisp while I'm sewing. And then in the very end of construction, I gave it a little mist of the Best Press again, and I ironed everything or pressed everything from the wrong side before having my mom pose for these great photos. So that is, I would say, necessary for embroidering this linen fabric, especially if you want to pre-wash your fabric before you do any sewing to it to take account any, sizing issues that, you may come into contact with the fabric of your choice. It's going to be very wrinkly when it comes out of the dryer before you're going to sew it together. So you really want it nice and flat and crisp before you even cut out your pattern. So after we cut out the pattern, you're going to unfold that center front and just smooth everything out nice and flat on your workspace. Now, I left the crease along that center line where I cut it on the fold because I'm going to use that to help position my embroidery design. So rather than press that out with a bunch of spray starch, I left that fold in until embroidery was complete. And then I pressed it from the wrong side using that spray starch to flatten it again for the rest of construction and for the finished presentation. So I have that center line going down the front, and I just went over it with a little removable fabric marker just so I could make sure to see it really well and so that you could see it really well in the photos that will come in a moment. So I did a center line, and then I measured about 1.5 to 2 inches from that neckline for the top of my embroidery design. Now, depending on the embroidery design you choose to feature on the apron, you might want to position it in a different spot. So what I suggest is print out a template of the design and pin it where you think you want it on the apron front. Then drape the front piece over yourself, over a dress form, over a friend, over someone, and make sure it's in the right spot. We don't want generally an embroidery design to be right here in the middle of our chest if it's a small scale design. If it's a big flower in general, you wouldn't want it like right here. So you get my drift. Do some auditioning to make sure that your design is going to be in the right spot. Then you can remove it from the person, the dress form, put it nice and flat again, and then mark your center cross marks. Now, if you have a different placement method, like those little placement stickers, or if you have downloaded our sulky placement stickers, you can print those out onto a sheet of stick and stitch or sticky Fabri-Solvi. I thought I had mine right next to me, so I'm sorry, I'm looking for them. And you can use one of those placement stickers. It's a little bullseye. It's a little circular sticker with just the cross mark in between, and place that where it needs to be so that you can put it in the hoop. Now, we are not going to hoop the linen fabric. This is just me using the hoop to align my center cross marks and align my sort of templated or measured design against the hoop that I'm going to use. So now you can see I have marked with my removable fabric marker my vertical line and my horizontal line that are denoting the design center. So we are not going to hoop the linen. And here is why. Most all linen fabrics are very open weave fabrics. That means you can see little holes between the weave structure of the fabric. If we were to secure that in a hoop really tightly, that open weave structure is going to open even more where we have hooped it. And then when you go to pop your fabric out of the hoop, those fibers are not going to recover. They are not going to come back where they were. So you're going to have this hoop burn, it's called, around your design forever. So we're not going to hoop the linen fabric. Instead, we are just going to hoop our stabilizer. And I'm going to use Sulky Sticky Plus, which is a adhesive-backed tearaway stabilizer. So first we're going to hoop the stabilizer only with the paper side facing up. You can see there's a grid on there, which also helps for design placement. If you hoop the paper side correctly so that your grid is matching up with your inner hoop ring. And also you will see that logo, Sulky Sticky Plus. That's how you know you've got the right side facing up for embroidery. Then I transferred those center cross marks onto the paper side of the stabilizer because I'm only going to remove a little bit of the paper backing to expose the adhesive so I can stick my linen fabric to that sticky side of the stabilizer. So the reason that I transferred those horizontal and vertical markings is so that I can only remove a portion of the paper backing. And what is really helpful if you only want to remove a portion or if you use a lot of Sticky Plus stabilizer is the Sticky Plus slitting pen that I'm using in this photo right here. This is a special tool created with a very sharp point that only pierces through the paper. It's called Filmoplast. I know, fancy. It only pierces through that paper backing and not through the stabilizer itself. Because as you know, if you've used scissors or if you have used a pin in the past to score the paper away from your sticky stabilizer. Sometimes with a heavy hand, you can go through both layers and then you have slit through all of your stabilizer and you have to rehoop or patch it up, and it just adds time and frustration to your project. This tool is only $6.99 at sulky.com, and I'm telling you, it is a lifesaver. I use it constantly. I'm always talking about it. Denise says she has it. It's very helpful. It's just a great tool if you want to only remove a portion of that paper, or if you have a habit of going right through all layers, which renders your stabilizer piece useless. And we want the least amount of waste and the least amount of frustration when we're working through the project. So now, after you've scored your rectangle or square or however big your embroidery design is, you're going to peel away that paper backing along the scored line to reveal that sticky adhesive. And there it is. That's how big my embroidery design is. I think I used a 360 by 260 hoop for this. I used a very large scale embroidery design. I want to say it was around 7 by 10, but those of you who are purchasing the design over there at Scissor Tail Stitches using our link, you will be able to see the exact design size I used. But I wanted to really make a statement and to have this large design right there on the front for all to see. This would be really cute barbecue style apron for Father's Day even. You could trim this in a cork or even a faux leather or like a waxed canvas. You could make your binding out of that fabric and then do kind of a barbecue style design, you know, dad at the grill or something like that. And that would be super cool. You could do your whole apron out of a canvas fabric so it's a little bit more durable for grilling over the summer. So lots of ideas for personalizing this. Okay, I digress. Our stabilizer is ready to go and ready to place the linen fabric on top. So you're going to use those previous markings that you have on the linen fabric to line it up with your inner hoop rings and all the placement stickers and guidelines and everything that you use to make sure that your design is going to stitch out exactly where you want it to be. Now, alternatively, you could wait to cut out your apron until your embroidery is complete. But since this is so much yardage to deal with, I just thought it was best to cut it out first and be really meticulous with my design placement. So double check on your machine once you have the fabric on the stabilizer and the hoop on the machine. Double check. Do your 4-corner check placement guide. You could even do a design perimeter based if you wanted to onto the linen. It's not going to harm the linen as long as you remove those basting stitches very carefully, just to ensure that your design is going to stitch exactly where you want it to be. Especially something that is front and center like that. We don't want it slightly tilted one way or another, right? That just kind of ruins your day, doesn't it? I'm sure it would still be really cute, but as sewers, we are our own worst critics, aren't we? So just do several checks to make sure that this is going to stitch out where you want it to be. Okay. Another thing I changed was the color of threads that Scissor Tail Stitches told me to use for the design, because I wanted my design to match this super cute fabric that I found that I was going to use for the pocket and the binding of my apron. So I pulled some colors from my Sulky Poly Deco Slimline, and I just started matching them up with the little motifs on the fabric. Then I took a look at the embroidery color chart and kind of decided where and when I wanted to sub out some of those design colors. Now they recommended using just a bright white for the lettering for this. And in the photos, it's much harder to read than it is when you're looking at it. It's very prominent and the contrast is really great on the linen. But I used just a little off-white because my fabric that I was using was more off-white or cream than it was bright white. So I did switch that color out, but just ever so slightly. And then I added a lavender in with my frosting, and that pink color became the detailing of the letters. So don't feel like you have to use those colors that the digitizer is telling you to use. You can personalize any design you want just by either matching the fabric or just on a whim, pick your favorite colors. I always suggest going back to the color sequence chart though, and making sure you know which color you're subbing out for which portions of the design. It makes it so much easier so that you're not doing it on screen during the stitch out. Print out that color sequence chart or have it on your computer or iPad or something close by. That way you can always cross-reference it when you are, taking liberties with those colors. So begin the stitch out. This is another thing I wanted to mention with linen fabric and when you are embroidering something that's rather large. See how the apron, the bottom of the apron is hanging off of my machine bed. Well, what that's doing is it's pulling the linen and almost stretching it during the stitch out. And as I mentioned before, this linen has an open weave to it. If it gets pulled one way or another, that weave is going to move as well. And if you stitch over some of those fibers while the linen has moved or gotten stretched or pulled, it's going to be like that forever because you've stitched over it. And as you know, with machine embroidery, there are a lot of needle penetrations, a lot of thread in a lot of these designs. So we don't want that. We want our weave going nice and straight in all directions during the stitch out. So to prevent that pulling, I just took some Wonder Clips and I clipped the excess apron fabric to my excess stabilizer that was beyond my hoop rings. I just clipped that there to make sure that what was being sewn out was nice and flat with the weaves in the right place. Now the excess bottom of the apron that was towards me, I kind of rolled it up and I held on to it during the stitch out. Now you could also clip that, even use a big banana hair clip type thing like these ones that I like to use all the time. You could use that and kind of clip it up onto your table if it's hanging off, but really be aware of that because that can cause your design to almost look puckered because your stitches have gone over these open weave portions. Does that make sense? Okay. And yes, we do sell those Wonder Clips at sulky.com. So while you're grabbing up your Sticky Plus slitting pen, because if you don't have one, you need one, grab up a pack of Wonder Clips. We have them in small and large. The small ones come in this nifty little carrying case, and I happen to absolutely love it because they start getting out of hand because I use them for so many things. These actually fit all of my small ones. This is the small size, which is really great for corners and binding. And then we've got the larger size as well in these rainbow packs. So if you don't have Wonder Clips yet, you're about to be amazed. All right, so here's just a close-up of how pretty that stitching looks on the linen. And I wanted to take a minute to talk about the design properties for linen fabrics. I'll say it again and again during the tutorial, I'm sure. Linen fabric has this open weave structure. It's not as stable or as tightly woven as a quilting cotton or something like that. So if you choose a design that has a lot of satin fill stitches or decorative fill stitches, it's going to be almost bulletproof on your linen fabric. and especially something that's hanging off of your body, like a shirt, an apron, if you made a linen scarf, the portion that has that stiff, heavy embroidery isn't going to move with the rest of your body and the rest of the garment. So it kind of looks a little bit awkward, in my opinion. Instead, what I like about this design that I chose, it's a very sketchy design. It looks like there's a lot of fill stitches, but there's a lot of open work within the design as well. Does that make sense to everyone? Let me see if I can get a little bit closer into the camera, but that's what I was trying to illustrate is this is a very sketchy type of fill stitch. They are all just straight stitches, and some go at one angle while others go at another angle to create this kind of shading within the frosting, within the cake, okay? So it's not a satin fill, it's more of a sketchy, open, straight stitch fill, if that makes sense. And I apologize if I'm not using the correct terminology to explain that, but hopefully you understand what I mean by that. Monograms that have a satin fill may be okay depending on where the satin fill is. If it's just around the outside of the monogram or the design, that will probably work just fine. You can see that this lettering right here where it says grandma, these are all satin stitches, but they're very narrow. They're very narrow. It's not a super duper fat fill stitch or satin stitch. So you need to be cognizant of that when you're choosing the design you're going to put on a linen apron, or rather than linen, go with a canvas fabric, and you can do whatever design you want on canvas because it's very heavyweight. It has a very tight weave structure. It's going to support a lot of thread and a lot of stitches. All right, so here is my finished design, and here I am with my trusty curved end squeezers. This is another notion that I absolutely love that Sulky has at sulky.com. These are my little snips that I use to trim up all my jump threads. So the end of the snips curve upward so that when you're getting in the hoop and clipping those jump threads, the tip of the scissors doesn't go into your fabric, accidentally slicing through it. What a tragedy it would be to have this beautiful linen fabric, go to clip your jump threads, and slice a hole right through it. Bummer. So while you're doing those jump threads, you want to make sure that the tips of your scissors are off of the surface of the fabric and then get in there and clip those jump threads. I highly suggest you clip the jump threads with each thread change rather than clipping them all at the end. And that's so that if you have any intersecting lines of thread, they don't interfere with the subsequent thread colors in the design. You might also find it easier to clip all the jump threads on the wrong side of the work when you are swapping out thread colors as well. I like to keep everything in the hoop when I'm trimming because it keeps everything nice and flat and taut. If you want to also do your jump threads on the wrong side of the work, simply remove the hoop from the machine, flip it over, clip those jump threads, flip it back over, put it back on the machine, swap out your thread, and go on with the design. This might make it easier depending on how many threads are in your design and how elaborate your design is. It might be easier to do that just during rather than doing the back side of the jump threads at the end. And it is important to clip those on the back side because we're going to remove all of the stabilizer. We're going to tear away all of the stabilizer in those little bits of lettering and everything. The only place where I left the stabilizer intact on this design was behind that cupcake, because since that had all that sketchy fill stitch going on, I couldn't possibly get in there and remove all of that tearaway stabilizer. But the bonus is that this part of the design is going to be stabilized forever. It's not scratchy. It feels nice and okay against your skin. So no big deal if you have a portion like that that you can't remove. However, you can see I removed all the tearaway stabilizer in between all of the letters so that my linen fabric has a nice hand to it, a nice drape once it's worn. I'm taking down everything in my studio. It's all falling. Okay, so you get the idea. Turn over your hoop, clip all those jump threads if you haven't already, and then start removing the stabilizer. So since this is a sticky tearaway stabilizer, you want to really get your hand along the edge of the design when you pull it away from the hoop, when you start tearing away the stabilizer. You don't want to start tearing away the stabilizer in a rushed manner because we don't want some of our top threads to get pulled to the wrong side, and that causes a tiny little pucker around that portion of the design. So be really mindful and thoughtful tearing away your first go at tearing away that stabilizer from the hoop. Oh, I didn't have another photo of this. Then I got in there and tore all the little bits away around all of the lettering and all of the design motifs. And you may have to get in there with a good pair of tweezers to get at some of those portions. Be really careful because, again, open weave fabric, we don't want to mess with the open weave or have it distort in any way when we're removing the stabilizer. Whoops. All right. Okay. Now, embroidery is complete. We're going to give it a little bit of press from the wrong side because while we're removing all those bits of stabilizer, we've probably created some wrinkles because, again, linen fabric, and it's really prone to doing that. Give it a little spritz of the spray starch, press from the wrong side to make it look nice and flat. Then we're going to set that aside and we're going to work on the pocket. So the pocket, according to the pattern, the Allspice Apron by Hey June Handmade, there's just one rectangle of fabric for the pocket, and you hem all four sides, and then you top stitch it down, and you can add your pocket bags, you know, a line of stitching down the center, several lines for, you know, a pen, a spatula, things like that. Up to you how many stitching lines you want on your pocket. But I wanted some more sort of oomph to my pocket, and I wanted to feature this really great fabric print that I found to tie in the colors of the embroidery design and to tie in the bias binding that I was going to make. So instead, I decided to create two pockets. And this way, my pocket is fully lined, and it's fully lined with the linen so that I have somewhat of the same hand that I have on the main part of the apron in my pocket itself. So I cut two pockets instead of one out of my quilting cotton and one out of the linen. And I used the pocket pattern piece. I didn't resize it. I just used it as is. So then I sewed all the way around, putting these fabrics right sides together, and I left a little opening along the lower edge you can see there for turning. I trimmed my seam allowance ever so slightly, clipped my corners, and then I left my seam allowance wide along the opening, and that gives you just a little easier way of turning that wrong side out and hiding that little area. So then after turning it right side out, you want to poke out your corners so they're really nice. I like to use my trusty knitting needle that I have next to me at all times. I have no idea where the other one went. I really use it as a point turner, honestly. But you do you use your favorite point turner. Get your corners nice and crisp, and then pin your opening shut with your seam allowance raw edges toward the inside of the pocket. And then I added another little detail. This is not part of the pattern, but I folded the linen side toward the right side so that it would have this decorative linen edge treatment on the top of the pocket. Just another little detail. And I thought it would also help for the longevity of the pocket. You know, sometimes when we do a patch pocket, the corners or our center pocket seam, over time, it could pop out and need to be resewn. So I thought that would give me a nice reinforced edge as well. So along the top edge of the pocket, I'll have 4 layers of fabric. So I just folded that over 1 inch and pinned it down. And then I just top stitched it. Now for that top stitching, you can see I am using this nifty stiletto tool. And you might, be able to use a tip of your scissors or even just a push pin. But if you have a stiletto tool, it's really great for this. I found that with these 4 layers, it was kind of pushing and pulling. My needle was kind of, or my presser foot was kind of making the fabric struggle. Now, another thing I could have done was check my presser foot pressure and just lightened up on it a little bit so that all 4 layers would pass under the presser foot and over the feed dogs in a way so that it wasn't struggling. But instead, I decided to go slow, use my stiletto to guide the fabric layers all in one so that that top stitching was nice and neat and there was no shifting on that upper edge of the pocket. Esther says a walking foot would work well too. Exactly. Perfect. Okay, so now we're going to place that pocket on the apron according to the pattern. And again, I did not add that extra inch to the pocket piece. So my pocket is just an inch shorter than the one that is featured on the actual Allspice apron pattern, but that's okay. It's still a nice size pocket. You could fit your phone in there on one side. And it was fine for me. You can enlarge your pocket if you want a wider sort of strip on the top or accent fabric. By all means, you can cut your pocket however you would like. So place that according to the fabric or according to the pattern. There will be a line to transfer from your pattern pieces that is the perfect height for the size that you chose. Oh, getting ahead of myself. And then it's as easy as top stitching your pocket in place. You just do the sides, the lower edges, and then I just went right up that center line. You can see I still have my pressed fold line that denotes the center of my pattern piece. That came in handy when positioning my pocket and sewing that center line to create my 2 pocket bags. So I left that until the very end, did not press it out until the very end. So, all right, now our pocket is on, our embroidery is complete. All we have to do is bind the apron. Before binding the apron, actually, there are 2 seams that you need to sew at the shoulders. And on the pattern guide sheet, she directs you to do a French seam right there so that everything is nice and enclosed. And especially if you're using a linen fabric, which wants to fray and stuff like that, especially over time and over a lot of, washings and wearings, a French seam is a great idea to conceal that edge. Hold on, I'm losing my place here. Okay. So you could certainly do that French seam, and she accounts for it in the pattern. To do a French seam, first you are going to sew your shoulder seams with wrong sides together. You really have to wrap your head around this step because all our lives we are told right sides together, right sides together. So when you have to do wrong sides together, you really got to think about, I'm doing a French seam here. There are only these 2 shoulder seams you have to sew, so hopefully you remember. uh, right, wrong. See, I can't even do it. I'm so trained. Okay. Such a creature of habit. All right. Wrong sides together, you'll sew the seam. Then you will turn it right sides together and sew the seam again, enclosing your previous seam. Then when you turn it to the right side, you have this little almost like seam bubble, and you can top stitch it down, and it's nice and flat and totally concealed. So I will tell you my secret. I just got in the groove of making this, did not even look at the pattern again, and I didn't do the French seam. I know. After all this work, I didn't do the French seam. So what I did instead was I used pinking shears to trim up that edge, and then I sewed it together with right sides facing and pressed open the seam. So I have my little pinked edge. At least I had the foresight to think about pinking the edge, because I was like, how is this not going to fray? This seam is going to come apart. So I used my Havel's pinking shears. I love that they're actually pink as well. And I pinked that edge and sewed it. So you will do your French seams and have beautiful, no fray, lasting, wonderful apron as it should be. Okay. So now it's time to do the binding. And like I said, in the pattern, she gives you a couple of different options for the binding. If you do pre-made bias tape, you will need a lot of it. I forget what she says, but it's like 290 yards of bias tape. I'm totally making that up. But it's a lot, okay? And so it's a lot of prep to open up all of that bias tape, press it, repress it, and prepare it for the apron. So I thought I'm just going to make my own, tie in that great fabric print to the binding of the apron. So here I am cutting my bias strips. I cut them at 2 inches for this. So it's a relatively narrow binding that's just a nice little designer touch. So I cut them at 2 inches at a 45-degree angle to the selvages, and I just cut a bunch. I think I got a half a yard of this fabric, used it for the pocket, and then literally cut the rest of it into bias strips. Because I knew if I had extra, which I do, I could create a matching pot holder and use up the rest, or trim up a tea towel and kind of create a whole gift basket that is all coordinating. So I never worry about having too much bias tape. I only worry about having not enough bias tape. So I cut my 2-inch strips, then I folded them in half, wrong sides together. Well, first we have to piece them together. What am I talking about? So you take all of your strips and you're going to piece them together by placing them perpendicular to each other. And you can see I've offset the ends a little bit to account for my 1/4-inch seam allowance. You can see those little dog ears, I call them, poking out on either long edge of that seam. That is to account for our seam allowance. If you were to match up your diagonal ends without taking into account seam allowances, matching them up so that the edges are totally aligned, you would open up your strip and one strip would be longer or wider than the other. And you'd have to trim down your bias strips. So you always have to offset that edge, leaving those little 1/4-inch dog ears on either side that we will trim up again after we sew it. So that's how you're going to position it. Then you're going to sew your 1/4-inch seam. It's a little bit difficult to see in this image. I apologize. But here I have it sewn from dog ear to dog ear with the 1/4-inch seam. And then when you go to press open that seam, your strip is nice and the same width from strip to strip. So now we have those little dog ears poking out, and just clip those off and trim them away. There they are. Bye. And here we have our super duper long bias strip. You're just going to keep piecing it all together until you have the yardage required by the pattern, or until the cows come home, however many strips you want to create. And if you want to have leftover to create a matching pot holder or something, which I will also be showing you momentarily, then make sure to create some extra to reserve for that. So then, after you clip away those dog ears, then you're going to press it in half lengthwise with wrong sides together along the entire strip. Then you're going to pin it to your apron, the whole thing. It's going to be one long seam. And then, you can leave your beginning and end, leave some extra at the beginning and end so you can join them together. And I will say, Hey June Handmade, she has a great tutorial for joining your bias strip ends for this apron. So make sure you're starting and stopping at an inconspicuous spot. I did it along the armpit on one side so that nobody's going to see that join. And honestly, I can't even see it just looking at it now, even though it's in the armpit. So when you grab that pattern, make sure you read her full tutorial, because she does give you a great tip on joining those bias ends. So you're going to sew it to one side, then you're going to flip it over, and I hand sewed it to the back. But this is a great opportunity. If you have sulky invisible thread, you can sew your opposite binding fold right onto the apron, whether you started on the right or wrong side, using that invisible thread, and then you won't even see it on either side. And I love using that for binding. I'll even do a narrow, long, narrow zigzag stitch with invisible thread along that binding fold. And then you're sure to catch both edges of the fold with either your zig or your zag while you're stitching the bias binding. So that's an option if you want to machine sew. Once you've wrapped your binding around the edge, if you want to machine sew, invisible thread is really great for that. Narrow, long zigzag, really great. Nice little hack. But I'm crazy and I decided to hand sew my binding back in place so that it was totally hidden and inconspicuous. I will say, if you decide to hand sew it, you will need to go through just inside of your previous stitching line with your hand stitches, because there's nothing to grab onto with the linen. You've only got one layer of linen. So you're going to see those stitches on the right side of your work. You're going to see those hand stitches that you used to complete your binding. So you will need to hand sew. I don't know if you'll be able to see this on camera. Just inside of those previous stitches. Can you see how you could see my first stitching line that I did by machine just barely showing, because I did my whip stitches or my slip stitches just inside of that line. So the reason you can't see it is because the sulky thread that I used, which was 50 weight cotton. I love the 50 weight cotton for constructing a lot of things, especially something like an apron, pot holder, linen, which is, somewhat lightweight. It just matched perfectly. The color of it may have been linen, now that I'm thinking about it. So those are my tips and tricks for the Allspice apron by Hey June Handmade. And I hope when you make it, you find some new tips and tricks to share with us. And if you do, please join us on our Facebook group, which is Sulky Stitch and Post, because you can share all of your tips, tricks, and pictures of your apron over on our Facebook group. And we would love to see your take on this great apron. A lot of people have said they want to use this for their ceramics and their artwork. And, aprons are just so good for so many things. Connie says, it's a good time to use decorative stitches when you're binding. So that is great. And yes, Eva, you missed the final modeled by my mom. So here she is, head to toe, modeling that apron. It's hard to see that embroidery design again because I was trying to use some natural light and all of that stuff. So, but again, the design, it is rather prominent. It does have some good contrast on that linen fabric. Grandmas are mommies with frosting. So cute. Okay. We've got some other questions that have come in, and then I'm going to share some coordinating projects you can make to add to the apron gift. And again, this would be really great to personalize for Cinco de Mayo coming up. You could find a really cute taco design or a guacamole design. I'm going to show you a couple of my favorites here coming up. So, you know, you can make it for Mother's Day, birthday, anything really. Celebrate anything that you love on your apron. Okay. Leslie says, when cutting bias strips, is there a certain way to fold the fabric to make cutting easier? You know, there are a lot of schools of thought on this. And I will say I did an entire episode of Sew It All back when I was the host of Sew It All on PBS. We did almost an entire episode on making your own bias binding. And I showed, I think, 3 different ways of doing it. I also had this really cool bias tape maker, which actually like presses and folds the tape for you once you have sewn it. That thing was crazy and awesome. But it only did like a certain width, I want to say. So, you know, there are limitations with everything, but also ways to make our lives easier. So I know there is a method where you cut your fabric on the 45-degree line, and then you kind of wrap it around and sew to make like this tube. And then you cut your strips across, but you're actually cutting them at an angle to create like one long continuous strip. And I don't do that method very often, to be quite honest. Actually, let's just be real here. I never do that method because I always forget how to do it. I am just being real with you right now. I'm sure if I did it all the time, it would become old hat and I would have no problem with it. But quite honestly, I just do that first 45-degree cut. And then I start cutting my strips from there. And I'm just not bothered by it because that's how I do it all the time. But if you do it a different way, if you do that bias tube and then you can just cut along and have this one continuous strip, I think that's so cool. I have done it a few times. It's been years though. But that is a way of cutting a one continuous bias strip without having to do all those perpendicular piecing stitches. So I'm sorry that is not more informative for you, but that's just my experience. Peg says, dumb question. No, Peg. Not a dumb question. How do you get the 45-degree angle? Well, I happen to have really nifty, clear quilting rulers or rotary rulers. I think they're just called clear rulers. I have them in various widths. I have a square one. I mean, 1, 2, 3. I have 9 quilting rulers. Do I have a problem? Do we need a support group? Okay, I have 9 quilting rulers and they're all marked, okay? So as you could see, let me get rid of this picture first of all, so you can see it better. There are several marks here. So of course we've got our inches marked on both sides. But then I also have a 60-degree line, a 45-degree line, and a 30-degree line. This helps when you're squaring up quilt blocks according to patterns, things like that. The 45-degree line is the one I use most often. So I line up my straight edge of my ruler with the selvage of the fabric. And then I see where the 45-degree line is, and I mark it on either side, and then I match up those marks, and I slice my 45-degree line across my fabric. And that is my first line that I use. Then I cut my 2-inch strips off of that first 45-degree line, going just across the whole fabric. So that's how I find the 45-degree line. You may also have a cutting mat. If you don't have a clear ruler, grab one. They are so awesome. You may have a cutting mat, and those are usually marked as well with those 45-degree lines, 60-degree lines. Yours might have lots of lines on it. Okay. All right, lots of people talking about the French seams, or you could do a flat felled seam for that shoulder seam as well. Really, really great. Lots of people are putting in their comments of how modifications they would do to the apron, so that is great. You could serge that seam as well, definitely, or just a zigzag stitch would also prevent fraying. And yes, wrong sides together just sounds wrong. I know. It's just hard for me to even say it out loud. I always have to think about it for a second. Am I saying that right? All right. All right, lots of people talking about the pocket. There are so many comments, it's really hard for me to find the questions. Betsy says, how do you store your quilting rulers? Mine slide off my cutting table over the loft edge and shattered. Oh no. Okay, so I have mine stored in a couple of different ways. If your rulers have these little holes in them, those are great to put them on a little hook and just hang them on your wall, or if you have sort of I don't even know why I can't think of this. I have these IKEA organizers on my wall. They have little, like a pegboard type thing. And they have lots of hooks that coordinate. So I will hook my rulers like that. I also got little plastic, I think they're meant to hold books on a bookshelf, but they hook into my IKEA organizer system. And instead of books, I put all of my rulers behind there. And so they are still on the wall. And I generally have them largest to smallest so I can see what I have. Any ruler that doesn't fit in that area, I hang up using the little hole on my little pegboard. Or you could just get some command strips, the command hooks, and make sure that your hook of the one that you've chosen is small enough to fit in that hole. Just stick them to your wall without having to harm your wall and hang up your rulers like that. And then you can see them all and everyone has its place. You can even like Julia Child style it and outline them so you know which one goes where. I mean, now that's really getting into the nitty gritty of the organizing. Love it. All right. Esther says, I hang mine on hooks. I also hang my hoops. All right. There you go. Sharon says it seems all rulers have holes. So if yours doesn't, I also have these hanging clips. It's a heavy duty clip that you can clip onto the top of the ruler and then insert into your pegboard. But I'm pretty sure like command hooks might have like a clip option also. So if there isn't a little hole there, you could just clip it. And still hang it up. Keep it off of your table. All right. And Jennifer says you can buy ruler racks that set on your table and hold your rulers. I have seen those too. And it's kind of like, I've seen them in plastic and in wood. And they're kind of probably specially made by artisans. So it's great if you can support those folks as well. But I have also seen like a 2x4 and then it's just etched out at an angle, maybe an inch or ½ inch apart, and your ruler just slips right in to those little nooks. on the 2x4, and then you could set that on your table. So really great ideas from everyone. Thank you so much for how you store your rulers. All right, really quickly, I want to just share with you a couple more tutorials. I'm not going to go into length at them. I just want to show them to you. And then if you want to make them, you can head on over to the Sulky blog for the entire tutorial for them. But with this apron and with Cinco de Mayo coming up, I wanted to bring this oldie but goodie back into your thoughts. Holy guacamole. All right, this is just a simple machine embroidery design sewn on a flour sack towel, and it doesn't get any easier than this. When I was reviewing this tutorial, I thought to myself, how did I forget this method? Because it is such a great method for embroidering these types of towels. As you know, flour sack towels are very lightweight and they have that natural crinkle to them, kind of like our linen fabric with that open weave structure. But they're so great as hand towels, as dish towels, even just decorative towels to have, next to your sink or what have you. So for this design, first of all, we have these flour sack towel blanks at sulky.com, relatively inexpensive. We have them in white and also in a natural color. You can grab up like packs of them, and these make really great gift ideas. A great accompaniment to the apron gift that hopefully you are, your wheels are turning and you're going to be making some of those this week as well. So start off with the flour sack towel blank, and then here's what I did. I used the same Sulky Sticky Plus for the back of the towel. I don't generally like to hoop things like flour sack towels or tea towels because of their weave structure. Same as why I didn't hoop the linen, because I didn't want that hoop burn on my towels. So I used the Sticky Plus on the back, and then I used a sheet of sticky Fabri-Solvi, which is a water-soluble sticky back stabilizer, on the front of the towel before I did the embroidery. So I'm sandwiching that lightweight, crinkly fabric in between two sticky stabilizers. One's a tearaway on the back side, one's a wash away on the top side. The reason we're not doing wash away on both sides is because we do need the stability behind those stitches to stay with the towel over washings and wearings. If we did not have the tearaway stabilizer, some of it stays intact behind the stitches for a reason. If we didn't have that there and it all washed away, our thread doesn't have anything to hold on to because of the lightweight nature of that towel. So we have our tearaway underneath, our wash away on top, and we sew out the design. Super easy. There's no shifting of the towel or anything because it is literally sandwiched there between two basically pieces of tape or adhesives. All right. So when your embroidery is complete, you're simply going to tear away the stabilizer behind the design. There we go. And then you're going to wash away the stabilizer on the top of the towel. And you have a really nice finished result. Whoops, not it either. There it is. Doesn't this make you want some guacamole right now? Those jalapenos. All right. So you could use your grandma design or a mom design or a floral design or a whatever design, barbecue design, and then grab up a design that complements that or one from the same collection and do a coordinating tea towel or flour sack towel. And that just really complements the gift and makes it into a little set. And earlier I talked about making extra bias tape, or if you happen to have extra left over, you could create a cute little pot holder. This one is a free project at sulky.com. Actually, I think it's a blog post, but you'll get this sort of egg-shaped pot holder pattern within that post. And the reason it is shaped like this is because this is one of those pot holders that you could stick your whole hand into and grab the hot item like this. So the smaller, sort of narrower part fits your thumb. The other part fits the rest of your hand, and you can grab on to your hot plates that way. So you could certainly create a quilted pot holder, use any design you wish, and use that leftover binding strip that you have from your apron to tie in your pot holder. This one has that great Insulbright insulated batting to it, so it repels the heat and makes it so that you can use it as a hot pad and not harm, your wood or your countertop below. And this design is really cute. It says, "Every now and then I fall apart." I know. So cute. If you're interested in these projects or these designs, head on over to the Sulky blog. I linked to those blog posts directly in the description of today's post. So again, if you're not seeing it, be sure to hit the little See More button so you could see all of the links for everything I talked about today, from the apron pattern to the great little Sulky notions and tools to everything that you need for all of these projects, the posts, everything. There is also a link to register for our fantastic Scissor Stasher free webcast happening on May 17th, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Be sure to sign up because you're going to get a free patch embroidery design just for registering. I mean, all you have to do is register and we give you the design for free. This is the design. It says, "Sewing Mends the Soul." Then join us on the 17th. If you can't join live at 2 p.m., don't worry, because as long as you register, once the live event ends, you can head on over to the education platform and watch the event at any time that's convenient for you. So you do not have to be present on the day. You will still have access to all the great content, information, and everything that I'm going to be covering throughout that event. Also, be sure to get your kit while supplies last. They are only $19.99, and I'm sure they're going to fly off the shelves. So make sure to grab up a kit or two so that you can make lots of scissor stashers. These would also make really great Mother's Day gifts, birthday gifts, Christmas gifts. Before we know it, it's going to be Christmas in July, and we're going to have X amount of days to get all of our Christmas gifts done. So these little lanyards would be good for a number of things. In fact, my girls want them to put their little arts and crafts things. Let's be real. They literally want every single thing that I make. They even want their own version of an apron now. So I better get busy. All right. Thank you all for joining me today. If you had a question that was not answered during our chat here today, be sure to email us at info@sulky.com, and we will be happy to get right back to you with our answers as soon as possible. And let's see. Susan says 2 p.m. What time zone? It will be Eastern Time. So once you register for the event, you'll be taken to a confirmation page that says, "Thank you for registering." There's a little add to calendar button. When you add that to your calendar, it will populate to your time zone, or at least it should. But definitely mark down your time zone and how it relates to that 2 p.m. Eastern Time so that you don't miss a minute of the Scissor Stasher webcast. All right. Well, thanks for joining me for a super fun So What today. I look forward to talking with you next week and the weeks after. Let's keep it going. Be sure to join our Sulky Facebook group, Sulky Stitch and Post. We would love to have you over there. All you have to do is ask to join, and you're in. And then we can chat over there as well. All right. Happy Mother's Day to everyone this coming weekend. I can't wait to see your aprons, your floral bouquets. I hope everyone in your life showers you with love and all of that good stuff. And I'll see you next week for another So What?